Hi everybody, I'm Marguerite Ro. I'm the State Director for AARP Washington. Welcome to our Caring for Caregivers conversations. Today we have Rachelle Czaplinski from BECU joining us to talk about financial planning and financial literacy. Welcome, Rachelle.
Thank you, Marguerite. I'm happy to be here.
So, Rachelle, tell me a little bit about you. I know our folks would love to know a little bit about who you are and what you do, and I know you're a caregiver as well.
Yeah, so professionally, I have been in the financial industry for, 24 years. All with BECU. I started out on the branch side of things, working in the communities, and moved over to their trust services team in 2006. So all of my career life has been in some sort of financial world. Personally, like you said, I am a caregiver. I am one of those individuals who are in that sandwich generation where I have young children, but I also have aging parents. Luckily, they live 7 minutes away from me.
Oh, that's good. That's really good.
Easy for me to run over when needed, and easy for me to give some oversight if needed. But it's not only on my side of the family, my husband's family and parents as well. We assist with them. His mom is in a memory care facility. So there's been a lot of caregiving questions that have come our way, and support, and just being there for family and helping them navigate all these changes as they age, and helping them navigate through all the situations.
It's quite the journey, but one I know that touches, in fact, almost all of us. Mm-hmm. So, given your background in finances, and given that you're helping your parents and your in-laws, can you talk a little bit about financial planning, especially for older adults? Yeah, what are the things that people should be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first places when that question comes my way is I want to get to know the situation and the adults themselves. What are their desires? How do they envision aging, and how do they envision care? I have people who want to age in place. They want to stay in the homes that they've been in for several years, and try to make that happen as much as possible. But then there's individuals who are fine moving into an assisted living community, or being around more people of their age so they're not so isolated. And maybe they don't have family members or loved ones that are nearby to step in and assist. So it's really first understanding, what does the future look like for you, and what do you desire, and how do you envision yourself aging? And then second is understanding the costs of care. Aging in home it does come with a high price tag, because not only for the cost of maintaining the home, but bringing caregivers into the home to assist you and provide for care needs as your health changes. Same thing with the communities, and if somebody is moving into, say, an assisted living community or an adult family home, there are costs that go with that, and they could be pretty significant monthly costs. So once you have an idea of, what does this future look like for me, what's the best fit, it's really understanding then, what savings do I have? What resources do I have? Do I have long-term care insurance? Are there options out there for me? And what happens if I don't have resources, and what options do I have?
So, so we do a lot of work here at AARP on caregiving, and certainly trying to address the high cost of caregiving. I think we talk a lot about the work of, or I won't say work, but the care that's provided by unpaid family caregivers, mm-hmm. and also knowing that a lot of folks are paying out of pocket for whether it's renovating their parents' homes or their the homes of their loved ones, or supporting folks who are, it might be that their loved ones live across the country. Mm-hmm. But how soon do I need to begin thinking about these things?
I've already started thinking about it for myself personally, and I think it's just because of the world that I have grown up in. Because at any moment, no matter what age you are, your care needs can change. And I even think, even individuals who, are younger and they don't see those challenges of aging, it's always good to have an idea in mind about resources, especially if you're caring for somebody else, right? But, it's never too early. It's never too early to start thinking about it because the cost of care is going to go up, and what care looks like, it's going to change. Family members are not living close by like a lot of family members used to. My brother is across the country in another state, so his ability to jump in and help is a little bit more challenging than my ability to jump in and help with my parents. So I think starting early as you can and understanding, especially when it comes to long-term care insurance and different plans, understanding what that means. And if you get into some of those plans earlier, the costs are much better than trying to enter into plans later in life.
That's why at ARP we've worked a lot here on WA Cares, which is our long-term care benefit that comes out of one's paycheck now, and we know that won't take care of every cost or everything, but it at least gives you a starting place as you try to figure out that long-term plan. But let's go back to the issue around of like savings and planning and that kind of thing. So does it make sense for people to keep their money in a savings account, or what are some of the options that people should be thinking about? Because it's really complicated, right? The retirement plans, and then there are things like Roth IRAs and all of those kinds of things. Can you give us a little, like, what would be the 101 that you would give to somebody?
Yeah, there is. Unfortunately, there's not a cookie cutter model that's one size fits all for everybody. So there are a lot of options out there, and there's a lot of savings accounts. While those are great to have, over the long term, the funds aren't going to grow. They're pretty much going to stay with what you put in there.
Sorry, if you see me grinning, it's in part because I wish that I had learned about financial planning probably a couple decades ago, but better late than never.
Yeah. But there's so many different options out there, and one of the other factors that you have to consider is your ability to sleep at night too. You can have a conversation with someone, and the idea of putting it into investments and really taking more risk could be appetizing when you see the number of how much it can grow over years. But there are ups and downs that you have to consider, and you have to also consider that emotional ability for you to be able to weather those ups and downs and sleep at night. So like I said, there's a lot of options out there, whether it's certificates of deposit, CDs, or looking at different type of investment options. You want to talk with a good financial advisor and sit down with them and really weigh those options and see the different plans that you can go into. There are IRAs, the retirement savings accounts that are out there. And if a lot of people may start investing in those early on during their career or through their employers, and eventually later in life continue to have those retirement funds available for them. But there's also the funds that are outside of those retirement accounts that you want to look at doing something with, and maybe just putting it in a savings account isn't the best place to be. But understanding the options, reaching out, asking the questions, talking about, what does your budget look like? What do your expenses look like? What does pre-retirement, post-retirement expenses look like? Because that's where the big piece comes in, is when you start talking post-retirement, because that's where a lot of times your income's changing. You don't have that ability to go out and work and find a different position, because now you've moved on to that other phase in life, and oftentimes you're on a fixed income. So really analyzing what you have, reaching out to a good financial advisor, talking with them, putting some scenarios. What if I want to travel? What does that look like? What if I just want to stay at home and help take care of my grandkids? What does that look like? There's different scenarios that you can run with an advisor to see, how is this going to work for me?
So I'm hoping maybe we can do two things. One is maybe a one-on-one around 101 on on some terminology, and then let's talk also about financial advisors a little bit and
Okay.
what that means. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned certificates of deposit, CDs.
Yes.
Can we do like easy definition?
So certificates of deposits are they're deposit accounts that you oftentimes see offered at your financial institutions. It's yielding a higher rate of return, so you're getting an interest rate typically higher than what you are getting in your savings account, because what you're doing is you're putting those funds, that money, into an account for a term. So maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 1 year, maybe it's 5 years. And with those terms, the interest rates can fluctuate and be different. So sometimes with the longer term ones, you'll get a higher interest rate. The big thing about that is you can't just go and take money in and out like you would do with your checking account, because that's the glory of putting those into a certificate of deposit, is you're doing that to put those funds away for that period of time with the plan that you're not going to reach into it, so that that money can fully take advantage of that interest rate that it's going to be getting.
What is a money market?
A money market is another type of deposit type account at your financial institution. So if you're going into one of the local branches and they have a money market, those ones typically earn higher interest rates than a savings or checking account does, but they do have a minimum limit. So whereas with a checking account, you could put $5, $10 in there. With a money market, in order to get that higher rate, you typically have to have a minimum of, say, $10,000 in there.
Okay.
And there's different break points. I know at BECU there are different break points with the balances that you have in the money market, but it is a deposit account to where you can write checks off of it. Some institutions have a limit of the number of checks you want to write, but or that you're authorized to write, but it's a higher interest rate for those higher balances.
So can I ask, what is the difference? What is an IRA, and when people talk about a Roth IRA, what's a Roth IRA?
So an IRA are the money that's in a individual retirement account. That's what IRA stands for. The money that is in there is typically not pre-taxed. So those funds in there have not been taxed, and it continues to, as if it's in that tax sheltered plan, regardless of how you have it invested, it can continue to grow. When you take the money out, it's considered income. So it's reportable income when you file your annual tax return. With a Roth IRA, those funds have already been taxed. So when you take those funds out, it's not a reportable amount on your income tax return.
I know there are like so many more terms that we could go down, so I won't keep us going down that road. But you talked about financial advisors, and this is actually something that I've been pondering.
Mm-hmm.
When does it make sense to talk to a financial advisor? Is it at all income levels, or do you have to be at a certain income level to talk to a financial advisor? And what are things that I should be thinking about?
All ages. I mean, when you get your first job, right, you start getting an income and you start building a savings account. It's good to talk with a financial advisor, and what are your long-term plans? As life circumstance changes, say you're right out of college, you get your first job, you're working, and then you have a family. Now you need to think about college savings, and what does that look like? And then as you get towards financial retirement, you want to meet with a financial advisor again and start talking about retirement planning and what does that look like. So there's no age that says you have to wait till, later in life when you're nearing 60 and you're now considering retirement. Starting early and really starting that plan in place is important, and getting that financial education.
So we talk a lot about fraud and scams here at AARP Washington, right? And we want to make sure that people aren't caught up in fraud and scams. And I think one of the challenges with financial advisors is it's kind of scary to hand your information over. Do you have any advice or
It
any
is.
thoughts?
It is very scary. I would recommend when you reach out to a financial advisor, find out about the company that they work for. Get to know, who are you talking to? What type of levels of insurance are out there? Tell me about your history. Tell me about how long you've been advising clients. What type of oversight is there and regulations are there out there? It is scary when you look at somebody who has a life savings account and somebody says, "Give it to me. Let me look it over. Let me manage it. Let me do that for you." And if it's a situation where you're not sure on, how to navigate that or what questions you should ask, turn to your support system. Maybe you have one of your adult children who is that person for you who's going to step into your shoes when you're not able to manage your financial affairs yourself, that may be able to understand it more and be there to ask those questions with you and help explain things and help really do that vetting as well. I think it's really important to find out about who you're working with.
So I know that you work with a number of clients, is that right?
Yes.
So thinking about your clients and all the assistance that you give them, what's like the most common, what would I say, like advice or things that you wish your clients had known earlier? What are like the three top things that you would have told to clients?
Well, to know that there's help out there, to ask for the help, and then not be afraid to share with somebody what your desires and wishes are. Oftentimes, people don't know where to turn, and they don't know that there's resources and that there are professionals out there that can help get them guided with or connected with those resources that will be there to assist them. There's elder care attorneys who specialize in doing planning for individuals who are aging. And, they oftentimes look at what benefits are out there, what financial resources can I turn to if I don't have enough funds to be able to provide for my care. Reach out, ask for the help, or ask somebody if there's ever a situation where you're not sure. Oftentimes, a lot of referrals are by word of mouth. I think people get connected by talking to a friend or talking to somebody that they trust, and that person saying, well, this is who I worked with, or this is who my family has worked with. In my situation, I get phone calls a lot from my friends and family members saying, we're running across this situation. My mom needs help. Where should I start? Who should I talk to? So, reaching out and asking those questions, because more often than not, somebody could say, hey, I've been there, I've done that, and this is who I've worked with, and they were great for me and my family. So, first, don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to, know that there is help out there. I think that if you don't ask the question, you don't know. And then three, bring people into the loop and reach out to professionals for that assistance.
And I think that one of the big challenges in dealing with finances is there's always a feeling like maybe I should have had more or I could have done better. And that there's both a little bit about the fear of what you don't know, right? I mean, when you're talking about the cost of care and trying to think about the future. But my guess is that you're also talking about trying to be really positive about the things that you want to do, like going on vacation and making trips as well. And do you have advice on for people who just might be at the very beginning of thinking about financial planning?
Yeah, so that big fear about what you don't know is, I hear that a lot. I see that with my family members, and even thinking, gosh, I should have done more. I should have saved earlier. hindsight's 2020. I could probably sit back and look back at a million different decisions that I've made, and if I could go back and change them, knowing what I know today, I would. But getting somebody to start the process, thinking earlier, going down that path earlier. At the same time, you did bring up a good point of going on the vacations, enjoying that time, and not living in that fear, and having that really alter the direction that you take. But I think once people have a conversation, reach out and talk to people, they'll know that, hey, I can still do this, but I can still be okay later in life, because I know that there are options out there for me, and there are things that could come into place.
It's particularly hard, right, when we think about folks who live on fixed incomes, and
Absolutely.
Certainly with the cost of living rising.
Yes, it is very scary. I mean, going out and buying a carton of milk is not the same as going out and buying a carton of milk 5 years ago, even. I was just having a conversation with my dad earlier today about, the fixed income and the cost of things and the cost of groceries and what that looks like. And, he's on Social Security. He's retired. He has a fixed income. He doesn't have that ability to work extra hours and get overtime pay if needed. So yeah, it is scary. There are different things that you could talk about and really look at. Budgeting is important, really looking at the different expenses that you have and things that maybe you could change around a little bit. I have these conversations with my parents all the time.
Okay, do you have a thought on credit cards? Because I know that whenever I open my mailbox, I have I don't know. It seems like I have 3 offers every time I check my mail from different credit card companies. And they all seem to have a great deal, and there's always something seemingly free or some period of no interest or something like that.
They build up fast too, right? The credit card balances can build up really fast. Those points may seem very attractive, but at the end of the day, there's a payment that's due, and then there's interest. Credit cards can be good if you use them right. They can be great in, maybe allowing some extra incentives that you're going to use. But if you're not managing your credit cards correctly, they can get out of hand. And before you know it, you have a big monthly payment that's due, and you have limited resources to be able to pay it. So really understanding what that credit card offer is. What are you going to use the credit card for? Are you going to use it for your monthly expenses and then pay it off every month? And do you have the dedication to pay it off each month? Or are you keeping it there for an emergency situation? And really understanding that and making sure that you can stick to that plan. If it's one of those things where it's just an attractive offer to get that extra 10, 15, 20% off of that purchase that you're making that day, and it continues to grow, it can cause a lot of challenges and hardships, especially when you have to start making those monthly payments.
So, one last question. Do I need, as I age, do I need to care about my credit score?
I think so. Yeah, I do think that.
Can you tell folks what a credit score is?
Yeah, it is a number that is assigned based upon your credit worthiness, your credit history. How good have you been with your credit? Are you taking out loans? Are you paying them back on time? Are you following the terms and the agreements to make sure that you're coming good on that money that you've borrowed? And then are you taking out credit cards, and are you running them close to the limits and barely just paying down just enough to make your minimum monthly payment? All those factors go into establishing your credit score. A credit score is, there's a lot of organizations that will look at that to determine whether or not they can give you additional assistance down the road. For instance, if, say you own a home and you've owned it for several years, you have no mortgage, but you've gone out and you've taken out credit cards and you haven't done the best job at keeping those balances down or paying them back. If there was ever a situation where you had to go out and take another loan out, say a home equity loan or whatnot, your interest rate is going to be impacted by what that credit score is.
Okay.
So if you have a higher credit score, and if you've done very well on really, managing those terms and agreements of what that the monies that you borrowed, then more than likely you're going to get a pretty reasonable interest rate and be able to go and take out those additional loans that may be needed. Home ownership, something can go wrong. You may need to access some funds to be able to make repairs. And at the end of the day, those are not the smaller item things. It could be a large dollar amount, and the monthly payments are really determined off of that dollar amount.
I have learned so much. I also really, really appreciate your calm approach to talking about finances. I think it's something that all of us could learn more about. In fact, I wish I had learned more about when I was younger. So I really, really appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely. I think that's one of those topics that you could talk for hours on, right?
I want to learn more about home equity loans the next time we talk, just because I just want to learn about all of these different things that are out there.
Absolutely.
Different programs. Folks, for more information about learning about finances and caregiving, go to www.aarp.org/caregiverswa. So that's Caregivers WA for more information, and we look forward to the next time we get to meet. Thanks,
Thank you.
Rachelle.
Thank you, Marguerite.